Meeting yesterday between Donald Trump and Lebanese President Joseph Aoun, and look at the meeting and what is the practical outcome of the meeting, and what is Donald Trump, what is he seeking for, and what is the main objective of Joseph Aoun with this meeting. He said that he was waiting for this meeting for such a long time, and they see Donald Trump somehow reacting to that, say this guy knows how to talk with me. What is, how do you see, looking at the meeting, what do you see coming out of that?
Well, it seems like the only real outcome that President Joseph Aoun got from this meeting is the promise to have direct flights from the United States to Beirut. Basically, American Airlines, getting paying the fee to land in Beirut, and that's in the future, and nobody knows about it. What's going to happen, of course, if it's really going to happen or not. So that's in terms of the only value for Lebanon. What Trump got in return is President Joseph Aoun promising that they will be normalizing relationships with the Jewish colony. And of course, that is something that is not in the power of the president of Lebanon. He has to bring it to the parliament, and that is the majority of Lebanese people do not want to go and party in Tel Aviv with the killers of their children. So it is very humiliating to see this president, who was at one point the commander in chief of the Lebanese military, and there's Lebanese soldiers that have been just buried after being killed and targeted by Israelis, and this man is willing to shake hands and normalize with the killers of Lebanese soldiers, let alone Lebanese citizens and Lebanese children.
Laith, he was sitting next to Joseph Aoun when he said he's going to use Syria, he's going to use Al Jilani to take care of Hezbollah, and we've heard nothing coming from Joseph Aoun. What is your understanding of that, and is there something behind the scene going on between the two that we're not aware of?
Well, it is very humiliating, obviously, to have a president sitting there and Trump threatening that a foreign force is going to invade the country of Lebanon, in this case being the Wahhabi death squads of Al Jolani and HTS, and this president just saying silent. And remember, HTS, Al Qaeda, ISIS invaded Lebanon during the war on Syria and occupied a lot of territory in the mountain ranges of Al Qalamun between Syria and Lebanon. And tens of Lebanese soldiers were kidnapped and killed by these Wahhabi death squads. And it was Hezbollah that liberated the Qalamun Mountains with collaborating with the Lebanese military, who took behind line as Hezbollah, liberated these territories. So we're talking about a force that invaded and occupied Lebanese territory and killed Lebanese soldiers and civilians. And now this president is just sitting as that threat is being brought back again, and he's saying nothing. So it was a very, very humiliating, I think, press conference for anyone that watched, who was Lebanese, who had any, even an atom of patriotism in their blood. They were feeling, of course, humiliated because of the way that the president allowed these comments to pass with no response. But this shows you, of course, the true power of this president, Joseph Aoun. He has really zero power on the future of Lebanon, what's happening on the ground in Lebanon, the defense of its territory, the defense of its citizens, the economy of the country. And he has also no ability to even say anything that is good when somebody like President Trump threatens that a foreign force will invade Lebanon to get the objectives of Israel and the United States to be achieved in this country. So yeah, no, it's very, very humiliating. It's almost borders on the humiliation of Zelensky when he was there in the White House.
Yeah. Laith, let me play a footage of Nawab Salam going to the town of Zautar al Qaribiyah. He has a message for Lebanese people. And yeah.
طيب أنا حابب أوجه كلمة للبنانيين وخاصة لنا في الجنوب من زوطة الغربية، وهيدي اليوم لحظة وطنية بتحمل أبعاد سياسية ومعنوية كبيرة، لأنه بتمثل هي بداية الانسحاب الإسرائيلي من أرضنا. نحن من البداية أكدنا أنه هدفنا هو الانسحاب الإسرائيلي الكامل من كل أراضينا. اليوم هيدي مجرد بداية، ولكن نحن مصممين.
Yeah, since it's all in Arabic, I want to read some parts of what he said. I would like to address a message to all Lebanese people, especially to our people in the south, from the town of Zautar al Qaribiyah. This is a national moment that carries significant political and moral dimension because it represents the beginning of the Israeli withdrawal from our land. Is that Israeli withdrawal from? What is that message? In how significant is that?
It's very funny because Zautar al-Gharibiya was never occupied by the Israelis. It and another village, Froun and Zautar al-Sharqiyya, were on a list of supposedly areas that the Israeli military will withdraw from, and the Lebanese military will fill their place. But when you actually went down to the south, Zautar al-Gharibiya and Froun are not occupied and were never occupied. And the Israelis fought very hard to try to occupy them, but were not able to. And in the village of Froun, the Lebanese military never left. So what is this idea of a phantom occupation and a phantom withdrawal from this occupation? This shows you how theatrical and bull this beginning of withdrawal of the Zionists from South Lebanon is, and how the Lebanese government of Nawaf Salam and Joseph Aoun are treating the Lebanese people as dumb and stupid, because they are trying to convince us that somehow the Israelis are withdrawing from two towns that they didn't occupy, and that we have to believe that as somehow the beginnings of Israeli withdrawal and some victory for the Lebanese government and the Lebanese military. So this is the kind of the theater of the absurd that we are living right now in situations like this, where it's been now, of course, years since the beginning of the genocide in Gaza, that the imperialists want us to not believe what we see, not believe what we hear, and think that our own senses are lying to us, and the truth only comes out from these Zionists and these imperialists, which are, of course, all fiction and a parallel reality. And so maybe in this parallel universe, the Israelis had occupied Zautar al-Gharibiya, and somehow the Lebanese military is entering it for the first time, when in the reality, on the ground, not in the matrix, the Lebanese military never left this location, and the Israelis were never ever able to occupy it. Now, this is important to keep in context of the wider war. The war is just actually accelerating right now in Western Asia, and this anomaly of supposed negotiations between the Lebanese government and the Israelis is so detached from reality that it's becoming more and more absurd. The need for them to try to convince us that things are separate than what we see is becoming more and more absurd, and that's because, of course, the how fast the developments are coming in the wider regional war in Western Asia.
Laith, the main objective of Donald Trump and Israelis is disarmament of Hezbollah. And whenever they're talking about, making a better relationship with the Lebanese government, it's all about putting pressure on Hezbollah. What are we hearing from Hezbollah reacting to what is happening with the new meeting between the two, Donald Trump and Joseph Aoun, or maybe the new sort of move, as you mentioned, with this new footage coming out and saying that we are liberating Lebanon?
Yeah, look, the position of Hezbollah hasn't changed since a week ago when there was the speech by Secretary General Naim Qasim of Hezbollah, where he basically said that they are rejecting this surrender humiliation agreement and that they will be fighting until the liberation of every inch of Lebanon. And I think we haven't seen Hezbollah take military action yet that is significant. But we saw, of course, the Israelis falling into mine fields or IEDs over the last week. And that shows you that, of course, that the movements of the Israelis in the areas that they're occupying is still very dangerous for them. I think in the next few days, as the battle in Western Asia expands in its reach and expands in its involvement of various countries in this battle, we will be seeing Hezbollah returning to full military activities, and that will silence the whole discussion about peace with Israel. At the same time, we look at how the Lebanese government is reacting. The Lebanese government is becoming very fragile at this moment. There is a famous young journalist in Lebanon that criticizes the Lebanese government and was criticizing MBS in one of his videos. They have just now ordered him to surrender himself to the intelligence services of Lebanon. Basically, they want to question him for his criticism of MBS and the Saudi involvement on the war on Lebanon. And so that shows you how fragile the government of Lebanon feels. So imagine if there is a real confrontation. There was demonstrations, by the way, today to support the journalist that has been ordered to surrender himself. So the country itself is at the verge of confrontation between this government of Joseph Aoun and Nawaf Salam and the general public and the political movements and social movements in the country. How this confrontation is going to manifest is still not clear to us how that's going to happen.
I think whatever they're trying to do is somehow making a new face for the government in Lebanon, or trying to make them more popular, because they're saying that whatever is happening is because of the negotiations between the government in Lebanon and the Trump administration, or maybe Israelis. That's the only thing that matters the most for Lebanese people. And this is one part of the argument. On the part of the Lebanese people, do you see, are they going to buy this sort of theater that they're making for them?
I don't think so. I think the Lebanese government is very desperate. It is, there's a huge media propaganda campaign that the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Qataris are pumping in their news outlets and newspapers and television stations that they control in Lebanon. But the situation is so clear in front of people. There's no reconstruction. People are still displaced in the hundreds of thousands across the country. The government is closing down some of the shelters. People are back out in the streets because they can't find shelter to stay in. The villages in the south are still occupied and destroyed. So no matter how much propaganda the government and the handlers of this government in the Gulf and the West are trying to convince the Lebanese populations, the reality is so contradictory to this propaganda that there's no way you can your mind can, try to lay out those two things together. So if there was an effort by this government to, let's say, give financial aid or housing or food or schooling for families that are displaced, maybe they would have been able to buy the silence of people. But they're so stupid. And also the Zionists and the imperialists and these Gulf monarchs are so vicious that they don't want to spend. You think with all this financial power behind these Gulf countries that they'll just spend so much money on Lebanon and the Lebanese population that the Lebanese population would stop needing to take social services from Hezbollah, and then they will flip on Hezbollah. But no, they are so vicious. They're not willing to do that. They want the Lebanese people to, on their knees, support the United States and Israel and these Gulf countries. And that's not going to happen in Lebanon, especially after so much blood being shed and so many martyrs and so many sacrifices by the people. Anyone that was, especially after the assassination of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah and eventually the assassination of Ayatollah Khamenei, if there was any doubt in people's mind that the only way to have a better situation in Lebanon is to fight, now they know that this is the only path, especially with the victories that the Axis of Resistance is scoring right now. Most people are waiting to see the good that will come out from the military victories of the Axis.
Iran attacked the American base in Syria. It was something new, and they said that the objective was American forces or American weapons in Syria. But that could be translated or interpreted as, as a message from Iranians to al-Jolani, and the way that Donald Trump is trying to manipulate the region on that part. What is your interpretation of that? And were there American forces there?
Yes, this is very important and very significant. As you say, it carries many things, including messages for the future. And so this base is Al Tanaf base on the triangle between Jordan, Iraq, and Syria. This is basically was occupied and created by the Americans when they occupied that area to block the transport line between Baghdad and Damascus, and by extension from Tehran to Beirut. So they, to block basically the path of resupply for the access for Hezbollah in Lebanon. And so this attack on Al Tanaf is very important because it shows that if there is a wider war, the U.S. position there will be completely destroyed, and the path between Damascus and Baghdad will be open. It also is a warning to the Jolani regime that if he does attack Lebanon, well, there will be Hezbollah Iraq and PMU units that will cross, especially after the destruction of Al Tanaf, from Iraq into Suwaida in the south of Syria, which is, Al Tanaf is just in the way of that, and which means that there will be a direct connectivity with the Druze population in Suwaida that has rebelled against al-Jolani, and the area is kind of self-governing right now. And it will be one step away. It will be a direct line of contact between the Axis of Resistance and Israeli occupation forces in the south of Syria. So we can imagine all these consequences of the destruction of Al Tanaf. What it means is that if the Axis of Resistance at one point during this war will want to have a confrontations with the Israelis in the Golan Heights and in Dar'a, they can open that path. And I think everybody got those messages. Al-Jolani got those messages. The Jordanian got those messages. The Israelis got the message. One last thing I would say was significant to the Axis of Resistance, let's say, liberating Al Tanaf and Suwaida, would be that the Jolani regime in Damascus will be cut off from its export point into Jordan. And already the economy there is in Syria is in bad shape. So this will have huge consequences.
Laith, the war is getting to Jordan differently. This time around, you see they're hitting the target precisely, accurately, and they're hitting big, because you look at the American bases, they're vast, and you have to, and these missiles gonna get to some points to some areas, limited areas of these bases. But when you have the intelligence coming out of Jordan, you can hit the target precisely, which has happened, the way Iran attacked American forces, the helicopters or refueling tankers, maybe. We don't know exactly what has happened. But Donald Trump confirmed that these intelligence are somehow getting to the Iranians because of the people in Jordan, or maybe the armed forces. IRGC said that as well in a statement. And how do you see the case of Jordan? Because as time goes by, as the United States tried to remove the weapons from GCC countries to Jordan, maybe I don't know what would be the next step for them to Israel, and how is that gonna expand the war in the region?
Yeah, like the statements from Iran's armed forces this morning were saying that they hit drone hangars in one of these bases in Jordan, and I think they were claiming at least 12 MQ-9 drones destroyed in that hangar. So this is huge losses. There's also another statement by the Iranian armed forces says that F-15s were destroyed in their hangars in another one of those bases in Jordan. So this is huge. And now we add to it the video. I saw a video just a few hours ago for American soldiers filming inside Muwafaq al-Salti base in Jordan as the Iranian missiles were raining on them, and these soldiers were in a total panic trying to find shelter. So, and finally, we also hear statements in American newspapers this morning saying that at least 600 American soldiers have been injured in the last few days and have been, extracted to the hospitals in Germany. So this is 6 times what the American military has admitted. And I think even this number of 600 is probably very low, looking at the mass destruction of the barracks areas and the mess halls where the soldiers eat, and their offices. And remember, all of these bases that the U.S. built in Western Asia have no underground bunker facilities because the U.S. is never used to anyone shooting its bases, and that has never happened before. And so Iran is doing something that nobody has done before. Jordan, as you pointed out, became very important in the American command and control and staging of its military activities against Iran, since Iran destroyed much of the first line bases in the Arabian Peninsula, in Bahrain, Qatar, Emirates, Kuwait, in the 40-day war. And the US moved its command and control centers to Jordan, and its air campaign to be mainly these jets flying out of Jordan. Now, with Iran targeting this extensively, it is forcing the American Air Force to move back. And they're too worried to use Israeli airports and airstrips because Iran would be targeting those. And the Americans up until now want to keep Israel out of this war. And so what's the alternative for the United States? The alternative for the United States is to begin using the bases in Cyprus, in Crete, and in Bulgaria to be the staging grounds for air campaigns against Iran. And this morning, again, we hear in the newspapers in Europe and in the United States that the U.S. has just signed an agreement with Bulgaria to allow it to use not only the NATO bases there, which already the U.S. had access to, but to use the national Bulgarian Air Force's own airfields and civilian airports to park its fighter jets and its fueling jets. So I think we will be seeing Iran chase the American Air Force to its back staging areas in Crete, in Cyprus, and in Bulgaria very soon.